Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to Equipping Leaders, Episode 5. I am your host, Natasha, and today I'm going to talk about when a new team comes together. We all want to be a part of a high-performing team, and those are the teams that when they come together, their goals align, everybody has a role and a lane, and they not only stay in their lane because they're so great at it, but they're complementary with everybody else, and it always seems like this really perfect thing. And while there are teams, high-performing teams that can do that, that is not how a team works when they first come together. So even if you have these amazing individuals who can either perform well individually or who come from teams and have all been proven to be high-performing teammates, when a team first comes together, it is not going to be high-performing. There are way too many things that they need to figure out about each other and about how to move forward together that need to be figured out before you can actually get to that point. Psychologist Bruce Tuckman came up with what's called either the Tuckman model or the stages of group development. And so there are 4 stages in that. And those 4 stages are forming, storming, norming, and performing. So in the forming stage, this is when the team is first coming together and everybody's being really polite to each other, seems very respectful. They don't really know where everything's gonna go and they're not exactly sure of their lane yet, but we're all just coming together. We're gonna figure it out. We're all optimistic about the future. This is gonna be amazing. The second stage is the storming stage. And this is when individuals will start to fight. They'll start to challenge each other on different things. They will specifically also challenge the leader because they're trying to figure out, like, where is this going? Like, we all came together and that's really nice, but what's next? How do we get to an end point? And how do we all have a role in getting to that point? The storming stage is a really intense stage of the group development process because some teams actually never make it past the storming stage. Sometimes organizations and teams need to be realigned because it's in that storming stage that they just can't get past it. They just can't figure out how to actually come together and work. After that, we get into the norming stage. And this is the stage where now maybe you have a few inside jokes. You all understand what you're doing there. You understand what your role is, you understand what the group's goals are, and you have all of those things in place. So each individual really gets why they're there, why that team is together, and they're moving along together. In the final stage, we have performing, and that's where this team now comes together and the result that they were looking for the whole time is what is delivered. And this can be, depending on the type of team, that result can be very different across industries. But at this point, the team knows how to work together. They know how to communicate. They know how to perform as individuals and all together. So when you think of a team coming together, we tend to think of a longer term team, and longer term is subjective. So that could be maybe you're coming together for 2 weeks, maybe you're coming together for 2 years, but it's a team that will figure out how to interact with each other, how to work together, and how to perform together. But there are a lot of industries where that is not the case. Industries like the medical industry or even the military or things like that where a team may come together, but maybe you're only together for this one shift or this one project or for a couple of hours. And in that amount of time, are you going to have time to go through all 4 stages of group development? Of course not. So Amy Edmondson designed this concept called teaming. I should say she named the concept called teaming. And what that is that is a dynamic activity that's determined by mindset and practices of teamwork. So it's essentially teamwork on the fly. We need to come together and we need to make this happen. We have 1 hour to do it. It's a class project. It's a lab. It's this thing at this capstone event, right? That we only have a couple hours to come together and work on. And teaming really identifies those teams or those actions of teammates where they are coordinating and collaborating, but they do not have a stable team structure. As a leader, there are several things to think about when it comes to your team. If you are coming in and it's a brand new team to you, but maybe they have worked together in certain ways prior, it is still a new team coming together, right? There's a new equation. So in the world of canines, if you have a bunch of dogs, and I know that people are not dogs, but just as an example, if you have a pack of dogs and they're playing together and everything's fine, if you remove one dog, it changes the dynamic of the group. And if you add one dog, that changes the dynamic of the group. And that same is true with people. You change one person and the whole dynamic is going to change. Not only because you don't know what that person added, you may know what they added as far as like their work performance, like maybe they did the budget or whatever, but you don't know what they added that is something that's not quantifiable. Maybe they had this great sense of humor that they brought to the team, or maybe the sense of calm or a sense of organization, or sometimes it was just a good personality that got along really well with everyone else. So you want to consider that as a new leader coming into a team. So not only are you the new equation, but also when someone leaves your team, that changes the dynamic as well. And when it comes to teamwork, it's also really important to remember that when things change, whether that's the leadership or a coworker or anything like that, that change is throughout the organization. Everybody feels that, right? So they've lost a team member, which makes them feel a lot of different things. And the organization has lost a member who hopefully was valuable at some point. With that team now, you have to figure out what is the structure of this team? What are these different people contributing? The easiest place to start as a leader is with how is everybody contributing to the work, because you want to make sure that your people are engaged. If communication is an issue, which it's an issue for everybody, even the most high-performing teams, but communication is just a challenging thing. Sometimes you'll think, I told them, I sent it in an email, I put it on this PowerPoint presentation, I asked every single person, and yet there are still several people who are confused. That is very common. So if you're experiencing that, do not feel bad. What you can do about that is listen to how people communicate, not only with you, but with each other. How they communicate will tell you how they take in information. People will say things like, oh, I see what you mean. That's a visual learner. I feel this. That's somebody who needs to really get what the experience is. I hear you. That's an audio learner. And while that may seem very simplistic, that is something that's really easy to take from your environment and reflect back to people to be like, okay, now I know how they need to get this information from me. We tend to want to how we communicated previously and in different groups and how that worked, and it was maybe a huge success. But like I said earlier, this is a different group dynamic. This is a different group. You add or eliminate even one person and everything is changed. So even if you're the leader and you've been in that group and someone leaves and a new person comes in, you now need to be very aware that it's going to change. It's also really valuable to understand where your team is in those stages of group development. So some questions that you should ask yourself, whether you're a leader or a teammate, is where do you think your team is in the stages of group development? Are you forming, storming, norming, or performing? And be honest with that assessment. The second question you should ask is, if communication is an issue, how are you listening to your team? And with that, how are you delivering information to them? People will tell you how they take in information. So you need to make sure you're paying attention to that and reflect it back to them. Thank you for listening to the Equipping Leaders podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha or on Twitter at Natasha Cheyenne. Please join me next time for more insight and resources to equip leaders.